Good morning. We're going to go ahead and give everyone another minute or so just so that everyone is able to join in terms of the attendees. And we'll get started in about a minute or so. Okay, it looks like everyone is joining as we are getting started. So we'll go ahead and get started just for the sake of everyone's time. We'll just see people joining as we get started. You won't miss much. This is just an introduction to begin with. So good morning. My name is Suhey Mojica, and I'm the Senior Program Coordinator here at San Pablo EDC. Welcome to the Holiday Tips and Fraud Prevention webinar, where we'll be discussing basically learning the latest fraud scams and that are targeting businesses. We'll provide you with information and steps to protect your business and train your employees. You will also have the opportunity to ask questions that apply specifically to your business. You will also learn more about the different types of fraud to be aware of amidst COVID-19 outbreak, common scams and tactics, warning signs, and how to train your employees on what to do, how to protect your business and customers from identity theft, transactional fraud, red flags, and best practices for an effective security program. Let's see here. And before we get started, this webinar is being recorded. A recording will be available on our website at www.sanpabloedc.org. Any resources mentioned during the presentation will also be available. If you would like information, please either call us directly or you can visit our website as well. We welcome all your questions, so just keep in mind that all participants are muted. If you do have a question, we highly encourage you to type them into the Q&A box or in the chat box, and we will get to them towards the end of the webinar. So with no further ado, our presenter today is Detective Joshua Hearn, but we will have other presenters introduce him as we get started. So let me go ahead and share the presentation that Detective Hearn will be talking about today. Let's see here.
So Suhey, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
So while she pulls up the presentation, I want to introduce myself. My name is Brian Bubar. I'm a captain with the San Pablo Police Department. Joining me today is Captain Laughter, who oversees the patrol division. And we're really excited to have Detective Josh Hearn present on this topic today. He'll give you a quick his background, but Detective Hearn has over a decade of law enforcement experience. He's held positions in San Pablo for the past decade. He's a SWAT operator, a detective. He's worked with the street team, field training officer. He's been a POA president and a traffic officer. All of his experience and that he's bringing forward today is really about building relationships and creating solutions. So we're excited to have him here, and I'll give Suhey an opportunity to do a translation.
Muy buenos días. El presentador de hoy día es el detective Joshua Hearn y tiene mucha experiencia en este tipo de información. Si tienen alguna pregunta al final de la presentación, por favor se la pueden poner en la cajita donde dice preguntas y respuestas.
And so as we go through this, I would encourage you to feel free to write down any questions or feedback that you might have. a lot of these presentations, we want to bring resources to you, but we also want to share experiences and perspective share so we can understand what it is you, our business community, our community as a whole, what you're seeing out there so we can better understand how to bring these resources forward to you. So we're excited to begin more often these types of trainings and these types of resources for our community.
Lo que estaba diciendo el capitán Bubar es de que estos tipos de presentaciones es algo que quieren hacer en la comunidad para mantener a los negocios informados y su información, cualquier pregunta que tengan, si por favor la pueden poner también en la caja de preguntas y respuestas. Eso les ayuda a ellos para seguir manteniendo comunicación con los negocios en la comunidad y poderles ayudar a ustedes con preguntas que tengan sobre información que necesiten.
So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Detective Hearn.
Good morning, everybody. Sorry we couldn't be here in person. I appreciate everybody that's attending this. Appreciate the intro. If we can we go to the next slide? Again, I'm Detective Hearn. As you've heard, I've been a law enforcement officer for 11 years. I was actually born here in San Pablo. I have family here. So my job here is very, very important to me. Like a lot of other people I work with, we take our job very serious. And, you know, these opportunities, you know, we all know this, the COVID thing going around. These opportunities are great. Being able to communicate with each other, be able to get this information directly out to everybody. Not only is this an opportunity for us to be able to communicate with the business owners and the community that we serve, but it's a way for you all to communicate with us, because you're the eyes out there. You're out there in the public, and sometimes you see and hear things that we can't see and hear all the time. And for that, we appreciate your feedback. We appreciate your questions. You know, it always makes us sharper, and we would love to help. So again, I've been here about 10 years. I've held positions on the SWAT team, field training officer, association president, a member of our street enforcement team. I've worked traffic, and now I'm currently in investigations. And like many of you all, like I've personally been a victim of ID theft and fraud. My wife has as well, coworkers of mine. So this is one of these crimes that it surfaces anywhere, and it's not specific to one person or another. So a lot of times when you get, you know, the officers that are responding to these calls, oftentimes, and I'm sure that a lot of people on this webinar here have fallen victim to this same thing we're going to be talking about. So this is a life-changing event if you're ever fallen victim to this. And it takes a long time for you to recover from something like this if you're hit hard enough. So yeah, we'll move forward. We go to the next slide, please. So what is identity theft? I'll read it directly from here. This is from the Penal Code. This is what we look at when we're identifying crimes from the California Penal Code. So every person who willfully obtains personal identifying information of another person and uses that information for any unlawful purpose, including to obtain or attempting to obtain credit, goods, services, real property, or medical information without the consent of that person. In any case in which a person willfully obtains personal identifying information of another person, uses that information to commit a crime in addition to a violation of what we just previously read, and is convicted of that crime, the court record shall reflect that the person whose identity was falsely used to commit the crime did not commit the crime. So it's very important, with that said, that second section, it's very important that if you are to fall victim to this, that you report it. We recently just had an officer call from an agency, or he was trying to get hired in an agency back east, and he was having trouble because there was a suspect here in San Pablo that actually used his identification and was arrested and fingerprinted under that identification. This person was really good at it and had used this ID before. And coincidence has it, they're almost like identical twins. And so it slipped under the radar, and it did change. This person couldn't get a job right away. So that section here protected him. This is important, to know these sections, because when you're evaluating, am I a victim of identity theft, or did this happen to me, or did this happen to someone I know? This is what we look at when we're determining if a crime's occurred. So if your situation falls under this, then, or likely or reasonably could have fallen under this, just keep this stuff in mind and prepared to, these are some of the questions that we ask when we respond to, investigate this crime for you. Next slide, please. So what is fraud? Every person who knowingly and designatedly by false or fraudulent representation or pretense defrauds any other person of money, labor, or property, whether real or personal, or who causes or procures others to report falsely of his or her wealth or mercantile character, and by thus imposing upon any person obtains credit and thereby fraudulently gets possession of money or property, or obtains the labor or services of another, is punishable in the same manner and the same extent as for larceny of the money or property so obtained. So we have a lot of fraud that we see in our lives. And I know that we've all received a phone call from someone you don't trust. You've received a letter that you don't really like, and maybe it's something you don't trust, and something kind of you get in the mail, your email, a phone call that just seems kind of bogus and bizarre. Well, it's probably because it is. So like as an example, as I put here at the bottom of the slide, you receive a phone call from your quote unquote phone company, promising a promotion or a deal. You sign up for that deal and provide your personal information over the phone. You never hear back from them again regarding the deal, but now the money that you've given is gone. Another example of fraud is we have like real estate fraud. That happens when someone posts an ad with a house up for rent, as an example, on Craigslist. Said person responds to that ad, and they say, okay, we'll take a deposit. And they take an initial deposit, whether it be $500, $1,000, sometimes $2,000, and they're set to get the keys. They have a move-in date. There's phony contracts that are set up, and they show up that day, and everyone's off in the wind. So fraud exists everywhere, and this is the crime section. And again, keep this stuff in mind, and apply this to this applies to a lot of things. So this is what we'll be reading before we come out to respond to your call for service. All right, next slide, please. Adjust my screen here. Okay, identity theft and fraud. Some of the things we're going to talk about is how to recognize it, how to prevent it, what to do if you identify suspicious behavior, and what to do if you fall victim to identity theft. This stuff's been going around a long time, and like anything else in our lives, things evolve, and criminal behavior evolves, technology evolves, and for that, our approach from the police department is also evolving. We never slow down. We're constantly keeping up with the new trends, and we're keeping up with the new ways that these suspects will try to conceal their identity and their crimes they commit. But with something like this, compared to a crime that we can readily go out and locate and prevent on the street. Identity theft and fraud is something that's it's incumbent upon each of us to set up our lives in a way that we are aware of what it looks like and how to prevent it and what to do if and when it happens. So this will give you some information on that. Next slide, please. And anybody can be a victim. Anybody can be a victim here. I have seen a lot of elderly are victim to this. A lot of college students are victims to this. But I've seen it all. If your information's out there, there's a likelihood that someone can get it, but there's some measures that you can take to prevent people from getting your information. And we'll talk about those here in a little bit. But I think as an example, with college students, we find that they're so wrapped up in school, they're applying for different loans. There's a lot of paperwork getting shuffled in and out, and sometimes it just gets overlooked. And it happens, and it's at a very bad time in someone's life when they're trying to get educated and get a job, that this can happen. And a lot of business owners and employees here in St. Pablo can fall victim to this stuff. And ultimately, as business owners, I know that all of you like to have your customers coming back. And if the last time that they were at your place of business was when their identity got taken somehow, I'm sure that you'd like to be able to ensure them that that wasn't the case. You've put in place measures that protect them, and each business is a little bit different, right? In what your business, how you operate, and what you do there. If I go to a check cashing place, that's going to be a little bit different if I go to a coffee shop, so but we like to apply a lot of these same measures to everybody, because these suspects a lot of times use the same methods to get the information, and when they get it, there's a lot of consistent methods that they take to use the information. But just remember that don't ever hold the reservation that, oh, it'll never happen to me. It hasn't happened yet. I'm 45 years old. Oh, it hasn't happened to me. I'm 12. It can happen to anybody. Next slide, please. So one of the bigger things that we have been seeing is skimming devices. And in the next slide, don't switch to it yet, but in the next slide, you'll see another form of these devices as well. I worked a case along with the Secret Service and other agencies where one of our own officers fell victim to a gas pump skimmer. And a gas pump skimmer is a device that is put, as you can see, the item to the left, the cord cable device, that's a device that goes in line with the brains of the gas pump's computer and the card reader itself. So somebody will physically unlock the face of a gas pump, plug this in, and then can either wirelessly access the information as you punch it into the gas pump, or they can later come back and remove that device and plug it into their own computer. That's important for employers and employees to be mindful of, because a lot of times I don't have a take-home gas card myself, but some employers and employees they give those out and have those where they have a company gas card. That company gas card can get used anywhere, and ultimately that information can be obtained through these gas pumps, ATM machines, the keypad inside of a grocery store. As you can see, that cover on the far right, that's literally just set over the top of and magnetizes to the top of a keypad that you would see in the store. So those are things to keep an eye out for. And in regards to gas pump skimming devices, the best way to tell if there's possibly one inside of the machine is the red tape there's a security tape on the cover of the gas pump. That'll be broken. That security tape's there for that. The last person to inspect those puts that tape on there, and sometimes you'll see that that tape's broken. In a case where one of our officers had some fraudulent activity on their credit card, the bank called and notified him, and he was out $400. We ultimately tracked down one of the purchases that were made, and it was one of them was within our city, and we watched video surveillance of the suspect actually pumping gas into a big truck. We ultimately used our license plate readers and city surveillance cameras to track that vehicle down to a parking lot where he was staying in a hotel room here in town. And there was a series of 3 other trucks that were equipped with gas tanks. Ultimately, we wrote a search warrant for the room and went inside and apprehended all the suspects, collected 3 laptop computers, about 200 gift cards with other people's information on them. Gas pump, this actual gas pump skimming device in this photo. So it was very rewarding to be able to get that information back to these people and bring some closure to, you know, this investigation. And it was a long one, but these are things to be mindful of and understand that when we respond to a call like this, our city is now better equipped with technology, license plate readers, cameras. The technology that we use from an investigative standpoint internally inside the department has made my job and my coworkers' jobs a lot easier to investigate these crimes. Next slide, please. So as I talked about before, that's that security seal, the bottom left corner of the screen. Be mindful of that. Some people, they break because they put their keys on them or they run their fingernail over it or, you know, whichever. But oftentimes, if you see that, I would highly recommend using a different pump. And that's important to pass on to your employees that have, well, just in general, but that have gas cards. Just make sure that they're aware that these things exist, because ultimately that's going to affect what we all love, and it's money. So up top left, that's another example of a skimming device that's put over a gas pump that can go over an ATM, and a few other examples. I've never personally seen this, but I know they exist, where in the picture on the right hand side of the screen, the gas pump, they can actually stick cameras inside the gas pumps like that and monitor the information you're punching in. So keep that in mind. Next slide, please. Check washing and receipt washing. That's been around for many, many years, and long before I was even hired as a police officer. It's a crime that affects a lot of people. I personally never fallen victim to this. However, I've identified a lot of victims, and my coworkers have identified a lot of victims that have fallen victim to this. So ultimately what happens is as a business owner, you may throw out the trash or accidentally leave something out on the counter that has copies of checks or copies of receipts, and that gets taken. Sometimes people throw things away thinking, oh, this ain't going to happen to me. It's just going in the trash can. Make sure that you're shredding documents appropriately. Make sure you're storing them appropriately. So if someone does try to break in, they can't get their hands on this stuff. Because ultimately what happens is they take this check, stolen check most of the time, and they actually put a chemical on the check, and it will actually take the ink off of the check. And that's the washing part. Ultimately, they put this into a machine and they can reprint out their information or someone else's information and associate to them and address the check to themselves for, in this example, $4,900. So this check here was actually a check that I recovered from an arrest here in town a few years ago, where the woman tried to pass this check at a bank. And luckily the banker, a preventative measure they took was that they have a system and they can run these, Wells Fargo can run that person's name in their system and see what their contact information is. And ultimately they end up calling him. This is a large check. And they were able to verify that this person should not have had this check. And, we responded to the call. But in a nutshell, it reads here, the check washing scams involve changing the payee's name and often the dollar amounts on checks and fraudulently depositing them. Occasionally, these checks are stolen from mailboxes and washed in chemicals to remove the ink. Some scammers will even use copiers or scanners to print fake copies of checks. And the postal inspectors recover more than $1 billion in counterfeit checks and money orders every year. We see a lot of this stuff. So finding ways for you as an employer or as an employee to identify what this looks like. You compare signatures, make sure you're requesting valid forms of ID from the subject or some type of identification that you feel comfortable with, but we would like to have some valid form of ID. Call the owners of the checks if you can. Reach out to them, see what they say. And ultimately request the police to respond. If you're just not sure, if the shoe's not fitting, as I put here, if it just doesn't fit, call us. We would love to come out and have a conversation with someone. It's better safe than sorry. But there are some ways that you can identify this stuff, before having to call the police. However, we do have a lot of the trained eye. So we would love to come out and sort out these matters for you if you need us. Next slide, please. This is an example of another check, and as you can see, a quick way to kind of tell here. For me, I found this check on a case last year. And the shoe didn't fit because I know this person and I know their criminal history, and that coupled with where they got this check from and the dollar amount, it didn't add up to me, and it just didn't seem right. And I know we don't want to get in the business of judging people, but when it comes to our money and comes to our senses. If you have any concerns about money that's getting passed, there's nothing wrong with inquiring on it a little bit further. And ultimately I did, and I just made a phone call to this office and I asked, do you have a customer by this name? And they said, no, we don't know that person. And ultimately the person was arrested and had to pay back the money that they took from these victims here, along with the many other victims that were also identified in that investigation. Now, next slide, please. So, just check washing receipt and receipt washing continued. Oh, that's something I almost forgot. The receipts, that's new. Receipt washing. So what'll happen is someone will have a legitimate receipt and they'll wash out the dollar amount for what they paid. Maybe something was on sale when they bought it. And they'll wash out the number and they'll put a higher number. They can change people's names, they can change dates and times, and ultimately we'll try to get reimbursed for something that actually did not cost that much. It's a lot of work, and a lot of people say, if you put that much effort into doing this type of crime, why not put that much effort into doing something legitimate? I have that question all the time. We can't change it, but be mindful of the receipts people pass. And again, if the shoe doesn't fit, ask a couple more questions, but just have your employees, use an employer, keep an eye on that, because that is an up and coming thing, is a receipt washing. And an easy way for employers to identify this stuff is when you scan the receipt and that price doesn't match, ask a few more questions and find out what's going on. And again, so another ways that you can help prevent check washing: deposit your mail before like the last pickup at your local post office. Retrieve your mail frequently. We have a lot of mail theft. That's a big thing right now. That and catalytic converter thefts, excuse me, are big right now. But mail theft is a big thing. I follow these track flyers and I see what's going on. It's not in San Pablo. It's all over the country. This mail theft, and ultimately it all boils down to here. So you as an employer can keep that in mind and also educate your employees to not let stuff sit. Ultimately is the direction that we want to go here. Don't let things sit. Can we go back to the last slide real quick? You can also, when you leave out of town as a business owner, as an employee, just as someone that lives here, me personally, what we do when myself and my family, we go out of town for an extended period of time, you can call the post office and have them hold your mail so it doesn't get delivered to your house and you come home a week later and there's a big old pile of mail sticking out of the front of your mailbox. You can have it held. Your business can have mail held. That's a safer way to do it. And then once you return, you can do that online, or you can go down there to the office. Then once you return, you go online and just unlock your mail and they'll deliver the next day. And go paperless. A lot of, as you saw in the previous slides, a lot of the elderly are victim to fraud and ID theft, because like my parents as an example, they still have a phone book and they keep all their numbers. I haven't seen a phone book in my house ever, but there's a lot of folks that feel keeping paper hard copies of things it's the technology, it's the way to go. And that's fine. But if we keep a lot of these documents around, that's just, it opens us up to people getting their hands on this stuff. And in the world of technology, I think a lot of our business now is conducted paperless. So I would just encourage that to your customers, and as employers, if you can offer that type of service to your customers, paperless paying, receipts, things like that, that'll protect your customers as well. It's real convenient. All right, next slide, please. So other types of fraud to consider, theft of cash, as an employer. We do see this, unfortunately, and not that we want to have to look at our employees this way or our coworkers or our loved ones this way, but there are people that sometimes, they get greedy, and especially during the holidays, it's coming up. We do happen to see a spike in embezzlement around the workplaces. So you just have to keep an eye out for those things. Most common in retail environments where cash exchanges are common is this type of fraud. Covers simply stealing cash, return fraud. Maybe an employee will collude with someone else to return goods fraudulently for a refund. That's, and then any other scheme that involves the removal of hard currency, such as embezzlement. There's all these crafty ways. Once the investigators identify that that's what's going on, it's a very easy crime to solve. So just keep that in mind. It's usually very rewarding, and you don't want people like that in the workplace, taking money from the cash register type thing. Expense reimbursement fraud, also called expense fraud. Separate fraud includes forging receipts, double claiming for expenses, submitting false reimbursement claims, inflated expense claims. So keep an eye out for that as well. Next slide, please. Other types of fraud to consider for your business, billing schemes. In most general form, a billing scheme involves employees generating false payments that are eventually or sometimes immediately paid to themselves. There are many ways an employee can do this. Creating false invoices for products or services that were not delivered, including with a third party, passing invoices through an account or a company the employee controls, and taking a cut from the payment. Initiating purchase orders and payments for goods or services for personal use, setting up fake vendor account and creating false invoices, which are paid to the employee, and then processing duplicate payments to a vendor. And when the duplicate is returned from the vendor, the employee keeps it, or processing duplicate payments to create a credit with the vendor, then keeping the vendor's next payment. And also another form is check fraud. I mean, we've been talking about check fraud, and that's one of the most typical things that we see is check tampering. And we've covered that in detail. You as an employer, being aware that this stuff exists is sometimes most of the battle, because a lot of times employers, I mean, we want to, as humans, we want to trust people. I don't know of a person that I've ever met that my first instinct was to not want to trust them. As humans, we want to immediately trust people. And sometimes we cautiously trust people, but we still want to trust people. And so a lot of times we're not looking at some of these situations and think that they exist, because a lot of times our employees and our coworkers are our friends. But the folks that we see oftentimes that commit these types of crimes, it's not a big master scheme. It's an opportunity, and it's greed. And some of the nicest people that I've met sometimes will commit these types of crimes. So you as an employer just have to keep an eye out for this stuff, especially during the holidays where times are tough. Next slide, please. So other types of fraud you can fall for, phishing, term used for emails claiming to be from a reputable agency. Criminals will ask for personal information, like your bank information. Criminals may call promising faster computer and internet speed and request remote access to your computer. I have, when I was younger, fallen victim to that myself. Company calls, we noticed that your internet's a little slow. Is that true? Well, at this time, everyone's internet is slow. Yes, it is. Okay, we can fix that for you. This is who we are, and they claim to be this reputable company. And ultimately, to fix my problem, they need all of my information, and they need my computer information, and they need to access my computer remotely. And that was the worst thing I could have done. I bit into it, and I admit that story because I want other people to learn from that mistake. I was young, and ultimately gave them remote access to my computer at home and completely cleaned everything out. So that's important, because they will call your business, they will call your home, they will call your cell phone. The phone numbers, they're not unique. They call a number and hope that someone bites on it. You can also receive emails or phone calls asking for bank account numbers to share some type of a jackpot. I haven't personally seen that too recently, but we have other tactics that people will use to get someone's attention. A lot of the elderly will sometimes fall for that. And also charities, sounds like a legitimate charity that they want you to donate to, and ultimately getting your information and taking your money. At the very bottom of this screen, charitywatch.org. You can double check charities that way. Charities have to register. People can't just get on the phone and start calling asking for money. They're supposed to register. So go to charitywatch.org if you have any concerns. I get it's sometimes the right thing to do to, and it's in our human nature to be kind and want to help. And a lot of people do donate to charities. But go to charitywatch.org if you have any concerns for the charity that is calling you. Next slide, please. So again, real or fake money. This has become huge. And again, as time goes on, the criminals become more sophisticated at printing fake money. And a lot of times in the speed of things, it gets overlooked. A lot of the criminals that we're seeing now that are passing this stuff, they're not the person that pulls up on the bicycle. They're not the person that pulls up with the clunkety car in the parking lot. these are well-dressed, sophisticated looking, normal people. And you would never think to actually check the validity of the bills that are being passed. So the Secret Service, these are recommendations from the Secret Service that I've listed here. Obviously, do not return it to the passer. Delay the passer if possible while you call the police, obviously contacting us. Or you can contact the Secret Service field office, but I would recommend for a speedy response, you call the police department and we will respond right away. It's an in-progress crime, and that's how it comes out to us and the dispatcher. And ultimately, it's an in-progress felony, so that's got a high priority for us. So if you call that someone's passing a fake check, fake money, that's a high priority for us because it's in progress. And then like write your initials and the date in the white border areas of the suspect's note. Secret Service refers to money, dollar bills as notes. And limit the handling of it. Sometimes you've already taken it and you've manipulated it, that's fine, until you kind of figure it out. But if you can't avoid touching other notes, try to avoid that. And then obviously give the note to us. Call the police and we will log it into evidence and ultimately have it sent to the Secret Service. They track the serial numbers on these notes and they investigate them further. For you as an employer and employees, I highly recommend this. These websites down here, this website down here at the bottom is for free training and education. If you go to this website, uscurrency.gov, they offer and you can register for free training and then contact them by email right down here at the bottom. That'd be great for everyone to just be able to see what these notes look like. They do currency and checks and cash and all that. So next slide, please. Spam calls. I know we've all gotten them, and my cell phone over the last couple of weeks, I'm refinancing my house right now, and my number somehow has made it into the world, and I am getting phone calls all day long, spam calls all day long. So again, right here as it reads, we may have entered the digital age, but the telephone remains a key weapon in scammers' arsenal. The Federal Trade Commission receives about 1.25 million fraud complaints in 2020, in which a contact method was identified. In nearly 1 in 3 cases, the call was the swindler's way in. Once they get you on the line, the phone scammers use false promises, aggressive sales pitches, and phony threats to pry loose information they can use to steal your money or identity. All right, next slide, please. This is a scary one, and I have seen this, and I have seen people spend thousands of dollars, emotionally spend thousands of dollars falling for this trick. Someone makes a phone call to you, and luck may have it, they will tell you that they have someone, one of your family members, held captive. They've kidnapped them. This happened to a woman here in San Pablo a couple of years ago, where one of her family members was actually visiting in Mexico, and coincidence has it that scammer landed on the right person. Called this woman here in the United States and said, we have so-and-so held hostage here. For her release, we want you to pay $2,000. This is where you're going to wire the money. Without hesitation, the woman immediately wired the money, and then they called back. That's not enough. We want more. Following that, she got suspicious, tried to call the family member in Mexico. Unluck has it, she didn't answer the phone. Wires another $2,000. So we ultimately determined that the call was bogus. We got a hold of the person and they were fine. So it's very important that if you receive these type of phone calls or your employees receive these types of phone calls, to not panic. Try to call the person in question, but immediately call the police. We have a lot of technology and ways that we can identify where people are just by the use of their cell phone. to tell where they're at without even talking to them. We can ping their phone number through their cell phone company, and their cell phone company will give us a GPS coordinates of exactly where their phone's at without us even talking to them. So just keep that kind of stuff in mind. And this again, this happens everywhere. This happens to employees and businesses. Next slide, please. Some of the fraud that seniors can fall for, credit card fraud, dumpster diving, that's in here because a lot of people go through the trash. A lot of the elderly folks will like to use, they're still in this paper document trail and they keep documents, but that applies to everybody. Make sure you shred your stuff. Don't just throw it away in the dumpster thinking this ain't gonna happen to me. No, because it absolutely can. And spam calls. Next slide, please. Warning signs of fraud. If it sounds too good to be true, it's probably not true. Life ain't that easy. It's not that easy for me. Sometimes I'll say you want a prize gift, been selected to receive a special offer. You must act immediately or lose out. You must pay for shipping, but then you get a free prize. Give us your credit card number and expiration date to verify your identity. This is important for employers and employees because, like myself, I receive emails at work. And if I get emotional on some offer that I receive and start punching in my information or my employer's information, that can affect everybody. So make sure your employees are aware of this stuff. Yeah, next slide, please. Some just quick things. Never reveal your financial information to someone who calls you on the phone. Don't allow strangers to come into your home. And I know it's kind of self-explanatory, but you'd be surprised. Don't believe a stranger will use your money for a good purpose. Verify who you're talking to, assign powers of attorney to people. Don't assign power of attorney to people you don't know. Sign contracts. Don't sign any contracts that have blank lines in them. Remember, always verify when you're in doubt. Okay? Next slide, please. These are a couple of things you can get, and I know everyone has probably seen these. Just a couple of things, just a reminder. Holidays are coming. These are a couple of things you can get they're very inexpensive. Screen protectors for your employees or for your business laptops to protect the information that's on your screens. You can get them on Amazon. You can see this one here is $40. You can get black lighting to identify bills. Money detector pins have been around for a long time. And currency scanners, those have been around for a long time too. Don't forget they exist, and implement these devices inside your businesses and make them a lot safer. All right, next slide, please. Here's a list of top 10s best credit protection services of 2021. It's Aura, Identity Guard, LifeLock, Experian, ID Shield, Identity Force, MyFICO, ID Watchdog, Intellius, Identity Protect, and Privacy Guard. This is good information to know. This will not only help you, it'll help your employees, it'll help your businesses, knowing that this is just the top 10. There's hundreds of these different services that you can do to help protect your business, your customers, and your employees. But these are the top 10. All right, next slide, please. And again, if you become a victim or someone you know has become a victim, call the police. We are trained. We have the resources and the ability to be able to identify this stuff and investigate these crimes. You can always make an online report. However, I'd highly recommend you talk to an officer if it's something where we can likely identify the suspect and track them down. This is identity theft and fraud. It's life-changing, and I'd highly recommend you talk to an officer and have us investigate this. Our number's right here. That's our dispatch number. And then obviously our address is here. If you do become victim, flag your credit report and refer your customers and employees to this. Contact TransUnion at transunion.com, or you contact equifax.com, and flag your report. You're going to need a police report number to help validate that you are a victim and you're not a suspect. Okay. So next slide, please. And with that, if anyone has any questions, I know it was a lot of material. If anyone has any questions, please, I'd accept any questions.
It doesn't look like anyone has typed in any questions.
Okay.
I can also unmute any of the attendees. If you prefer to ask your question live, please let me know and I can go ahead and give you so that you can ask your question live. But I did see prior to this webinar, someone did ask if there were more of COVID-19 scams that are going around through the pandemic that you guys are aware of.
No, not that I have seen that are specific to COVID. I think that the big thing right now, and we haven't seen that at our work, nor have I responded or heard of anyone responding to these calls, is where some employee or employer is manufacturing fraudulent COVID cards. I would say that's probably something that is on the rise now because of the times we're in. Some employers are they're mandating vaccination cards. And some people don't want to get vaccinated. I'm not going to get into the politics of it. But we are seeing an increase in vaccination cards throughout the country. But here in San Pablo, I haven't heard of anything here where that's going on.
Okay. And nothing business related that has to do, I think last year we received a call from a business saying that someone had gone into their business and had talked to with the employees saying that they were asking for some kind of fee. And it was good that they reported it to us and then we reported it to San Pablo PD and they followed up on it. But
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so they're
yeah.
just doing in-person phishing.
Got it.
You know, they're just
Okay.
trying some way to scam someone into trusting them. You know, whatever the flavor of the month is, these suspects will use whatever they can to get their way into people's hearts.
Right, okay. So, ¿alguna persona tiene alguna pregunta en español que la quiera hacer y yo la puedo traducir en inglés? Creo que no tengo a nadie aquí que hable español, pero quiero dar la oportunidad si hay alguien que quiere hacer una pregunta en español. So I was just saying if there was any Spanish speakers, if they wanted to ask a question, that they can go ahead and ask and I can translate it. So it does look like there's a question from
Okay.
a business. It looks like, do you prefer, let's see here. Do you want to ask your question live or do you want to type it into the Q&A? Let's see here. I have given you permission to ask the question live. Are you able to unmute yourself? Hello?
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, so sorry. I was about to ask a question and it locked me out.
It's
Thank
okay.
you so
We all
much.
have technical issues. Believe me, we're all still learning, so it's okay.
A call came in and I'm like, is this phishing right now or what are the charges?
No,
So
you're
thank
fine here.
you so much.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you guys for doing this for real. This is huge. I'm Joy. I go by Joy to the world, so everyone remembers my name. I'm with Trust Bank, so San Pablo Police is my neighbor. My question is, I'm the branch manager here, so I was so happy I got this invitation. I didn't know it was happening, so this is great. So my question is, in case we have something, for example, someone passing out bad money or check, is the dispatch number the best number to call, or is there a different number to call? Because we do our best to return.
That's the best number to call.
Okay.
That 510-724-1111. Yep.
Okay. Thank you so very much.
Absolutely.
We're in this
Thank you.
together. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Do you have any other questions or was that all for you?
Not at this time, because we do a lot of training around here, and I'm so glad we're getting our community involved because we can work together to get out this stuff. So it's everyday thing we have to look out for.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
You know, what happens to one affects everyone. So I'm so glad we do this. Thank you.
Yes, and just FYI, Joy, this recording will be available if you wanted to use it for training your tellers or to have anyone look at it. It will be available on YouTube and on our website. So
Amazing. All right.
I'm not sure. I'll ask Detective Joshua Hearn if are these slides, are we allowed to share these slides or no?
I don't see why not.
Okay.
I mean, it's been available and it's been recorded, and
Okay.
you know, I don't unless the captains have any feedback on that. I don't. If someone wants to, I guess if you want to message out my email to everybody, and anybody that does want to have a copy of this, then I can reach out to them and give it to them.
Okay, perfect. Sounds great. Then yes, if anyone is interested in getting a copy of the slides, please let us know and we can connect you with Detective Hearn. We also have a copy at San Pablo EDC, so we can definitely make that available if need be. And again, a recording will be available in the next 2 days. So if you wanted to have, you know, anyone for employee training, please, you know, go ahead and use the recording. That was the purpose of this webinar today. So.
And I just messaged everybody. I think this goes to the chat room. It goes to everybody here. I just messaged my email.
Perfect.
So just email me. If you can email me your request, and then we can communicate that way. So my email is in the chat. I just put it up there.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And then I'll go ahead and enter our website as well for the recording. And if you're not able to connect, I'll also put our phone number. So that way, if you're having issues looking at the recording, you can definitely contact us here at San Pablo EDC and we can help you with that as well. So let's see here, and hopefully you guys can see that. Let's see. I don't think Detective Hearn, your email went in. Do you mind typing it?
Yeah, I'll just read it. It's simple. I'll read it to you. Or can you share it?
Yes, go ahead. I'll type it in.
Yeah, it's Josh, Josh.
Okay.
And then a second H.
All righty.
At sanpabloca.gov.
sanpabloca.gov. Okay. Can everybody see it now? Perfect. Great. And I think it's already close to 10 o'clock. So if anyone else does anyone else have a question before? I don't know if anyone else has any other, Captain Bubar or Captain Laughter, if you guys have anything else that you would like to say before we disconnect.
I just want to thank everyone for joining us, and we look forward to connecting in the future for future training, webinars, and perspective sharing.
Perfect. Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you to our presenter, Detective Joshua Hearn, for all this great information. And I'm glad that everyone found it informational, and it looks like you know, everyone found the information to be able to be used in their daily business life. So thank you so much for your time, everyone who made the time to join us today, and to Captain Bubar, Captain Laughter, and Detective Hearn. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Yeah.